Thank you. I'm particularly pleased to speak here in Paris about the right to die, because I first got involved with the right to die movement 8 years ago when my late wife, Anne Holliday, was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Anne and I regularly visited Paris during our 25 years together. We were in the Stade de France in 1998 when France beat Brazil to win the Soccer World Cup. When we got married, after Anne was diagnosed with cancer after living together for 25 years, we came to Paris on our honeymoon. So I'm particularly pleased to be here to talk about this topic. And having lived through Anne's dying, I understand at first hand why the right to die is one of the most important rights in an ethical society. But in Ireland, as in most countries, love and empathy and compassion and justice are frustrated by the law. Every year, many good people face the ethical dilemma between lawful suffering and unlawful compassion. And they face it at a time when they're at their most vulnerable and when they need the most support. Ultimately, this is an issue where the law has to catch up with reality. The courts are not in control of what terminally ill people choose to do, because terminally ill people have their own ethical priorities and their own bodily autonomy. Let me tell you a little bit about my wife, Anne. We loved each other for more than a quarter of a century. Anne was smart and sexy and funny and courageous and compassionate. She was loving and loyal to her family and friends, and she campaigned to build a peaceful, liberal, secular and caring Ireland. We campaigned together on the losing side when Ireland failed to legalise divorce in the 1990s, and we campaigned on the winning side on the same issue a decade later. We campaigned for LGBT rights. We founded New Consensus, which is a peace group that campaigned against IRA and loyalist paramilitary terrorism and promoted a peaceful, democratic Northern Ireland based on mutual respect, civil liberty and freely given allegiance to the state. Those were the things that mattered to Anne while she was alive. When she was diagnosed, she didn't want to die, but neither did she fear death. She was grateful to have enough time and enough notice of her death to do the things that she wanted to do again before she died, one of which was visiting Paris again. And ultimately she wanted to die painlessly and peacefully, and at a time of her choosing, without having to undergo unnecessary suffering at the end. And she had decided, regardless of the law, that if she had reached that stage, that she would have taken her own life, and I would have helped her to do that. And once Anne had made that decision, her quality of life increased considerably, and she was able to fully enjoy the final year and a half of her life in a way that she would not have been had she not had that option available. Like most people who make the decision to be able to end their own lives, Anne died naturally at the end. That is what happens with most people. She was told she had 6 months to live, but she lived for a year and a half, and we made the most of that precious time together. And this is one of the most important things that I think a lot of the opponents of the right to die don't realise. That it is not about the act of dying. It is about the peace of mind and quality of life that you have while you are still alive, by knowing that you have the option to end things in a way of your choosing if you need to. When Anne was dying, we met Tom Curran, whose partner, Mary Fleming, didn't want to live through the final stages of multiple sclerosis. And she argued in the Irish courts that suicide was lawful in Ireland, but that she was discriminated against because of her disability, because she couldn't commit suicide without assistance, and therefore she couldn't exercise her right to commit suicide. She took her legal case as far as the Irish Supreme Court, but the court ruled that despite suicide being lawful, there was no constitutional right either to suicide or to arrange for the termination of your own life with assistance. However, the court did say that Parliament could legislate for assisted dying if it included safeguards to ensure that the law was not abused. Since then, the Irish Parliament has refused to legislate for this right, and 3 years ago, Mary died with the assistance of her partner Tom, as she wanted to. She didn't have to undergo the unnecessary suffering that she wanted to avoid. But not everybody is as lucky, not everybody has the psychological resources and the support network that Mary and Anne had. Mary's partner Tom is a personal friend of mine, was a personal friend of Anne's while Anne was alive. And he's one of the most inspirational campaigners for justice that I have the privilege to know. He was a great source of comfort and empathy and help to Anne and I when Anne was dying. After Mary's court case, Tom and I and a civil rights activist, Maureen de Burke in Ireland, decided to establish a lobby group in Ireland, Right to Die Ireland, to seek legislative change on this issue. And Right to Die Ireland promotes two equally important principles. Firstly, the right of terminally or seriously ill people who want to live as long as they can to get the best possible medical resources that are available to enable them to do this. Nobody should be forced to die earlier than they want to, and the law should have safeguards to protect that right. And secondly, the right of rationally, terminally or seriously ill people who want to die peacefully at a time of their choosing to be supported in carrying out that wish. Nobody should be forced to endure unnecessary suffering, particularly when it is a question not of whether they will die, but just of how and when. Before the last Irish election, an independent member of the Irish Parliament had prepared a bill to legislate for assisted dying in Ireland. Unfortunately and ironically, that independent member is now a member of the current government, and because of that he has had to drop his bill because it's not government policy, but we are working with other opposition members of Parliament to bring a similar bill to the Irish Parliament later this year. Tom Curran is now the European spokesperson of Exit International, which supports other people facing this dilemma. And one consequence of him taking this role is that the Irish police have recently questioned Tom about the nature of his partner Mary's death nearly 4 years after Mary died. This is not deterring Tom from campaigning. The police have invited him to come into the station for further questioning about Mary's death. He has refused, and his solicitor has invited the police to arrest Tom if they wanted to charge him with a crime. Exit International's vision is that every adult of sound mind has the right to implement plans for the end of their life so that their death is reliable, peaceful, and at a time of their own choosing. Exit is now developing an app to ensure the purity of euthanasia drugs that are purchased online. And this is a crucial issue because the worst outcome for anybody wanting to die will be to make a failed attempt and to end up alive but brain damaged. Indeed, this is another strong argument for legal assisted dying, because people would then have access to reliable information as well as psychological counselling, and that may indeed in some cases end up with them changing their minds. Exit is also currently informing people about a new option, and this is very recent, a new option for being able to reliably kill yourself without breaking the law. There is now a soluble substance which is used in small amounts as a food preservative that is legally available in amounts that can kill you. It's not as peaceful or not as reliably peaceful as the current drug that is normally used, which you can't get legally unless you have a license, in that this soluble substance won't put you asleep first, so you'll be aware that you're dying, but it's not painful and it is as reliable. Exit International is hosting 2 events in the coming month for anybody that is interested in finding out more about what they do and about these new options in particular. There's a workshop in London in England on the 30th of September, which I think is next week, and there's a conference in Toronto in Canada on the 28th and 29th of October. And you can contact Exit if you want to attend either of those if you're living either in England or in Canada. I want to end up with 2 just small good news stories. Firstly, Tom Curran was approached last year by a group of 3rd level students in Ireland who were doing a university project on the right to die. And as part of it, they interviewed him for what was to have been a college project. It's ended up as a documentary that is now being screened in a film festival in Ireland, and when Tom was invited to the film festival, he discovered that it was in Mary's home county of Donegal, and it's in the hotel where Mary went on her honeymoon, so he's quite pleased with that coincidence and he's looking forward to that in the coming weeks. Secondly, I want to tell you briefly about something after my wife Anne died. She donated her body for medical education and research, and 3 years later, when they were finished with her body was buried in the Dublin Medical School's plot in Glasnevin Cemetery in Dublin. But when I went to that graveyard, I discovered that the medical school plot had only one memorial stone for all the people that are buried there. And that memorial stone had a religious inscription on it, asking everybody to pray for the souls of the people buried there so that they might rest in the peace of God. So I told the Dublin medical schools that Anne would not have wanted to have been buried under such a memorial stone. And I told them that they wouldn't dream of burying a religious person's body under a memorial stone that announced that there is no God. And in a positive move towards the type of Ireland that I was talking about in my talk earlier on this morning, the Dublin medical schools agreed and they respected what they knew would have been Anne's wishes for a secular burial, and they replaced the decades-old religious memorial stone with a new, neutral, inclusive one that has a secular message. So this means that from now on, when anybody donates their body for medical education and research in Dublin, their loved ones can now remember them at their grave in accordance with their own personal beliefs, whether those beliefs are religious or atheistic, and nobody need feel excluded or marginalised. And that also means that Anne is still helping others through the only afterlife that actually exists, not in a comforting but imaginary heaven, but in the reality of our memories of how she lived and loved, and our continuation of her life's work for a peaceful, liberal, secular and caring world that should include the right to die peacefully. Thank you very much.